Okay, well, my name is Brian McQueary. I'm 44 years old. Where I'm at now, I'm married. I have 2 children. I just regained sole custody of my daughter Marianne. I'm also I'm involved in the in leadership in the Reformers Unanimous program. I attend, faithful member of my church. I serve in the choir, and I am the Chief Operating Officer for All Red Industries. Well, I came to the House of Hope a complete disaster, as they say, a homeless, hopeless drug addict. I arrived here. I had just gotten out of jail again, sentenced to 12 years in prison, suspended to 5 years probation. I had previously spent 15 years behind bars. I lost everything that ever meant anything, including my daughter. No place to go, just basically living a drug addicted life. I was in the spring of 2022 graduation. I arrived here on March 1st, 2021, and I came in like a tornado. You know, I thought that, like everything else in life, you know, I was going to extort the gray areas and I was going to bend the program to my will and basically slip through the cracks, like I've done my entire adult life. Not unfortunately, fortunately, God is better than that, and He put the strength of the men in my life that are found here in the House of Hope. You know, to name a few, I want to, you know, Mr. White and Mr. Harold Watson were just paramount in the change in my life. Again, like, you know, living in a life of addiction and destroying everything, like that includes resources, you know what I mean, and not taking advantage of those resources or not even knowing about those resources. One of the things that I wanted to do when someone asked me, you know, why are you here? I was like, I want to get custody of my daughter. You know, my whole desire was to be able to afford her a life that, unless I made some changes, she otherwise wouldn't get to live. And so there's a church around the corner on Irby Street there that does just a resource center for the homeless, and they encouraged me to go there. I think Mr. White might have encouraged it. Mr. Myers, I believe, is who actually took me down there. And, you know, with that same, like, you know, just attitude that I carried everywhere, I'm walking around the booths and I'm like, man, this isn't for me. You know, I don't need to be here. And I made it all the way around, and then I got to the South Carolina Legal Services, and I was like, well, why not? You know, that's a prompting of the Holy Spirit that moves us to do something that's usually outside of our comfort zone. And so I just kind of introduced myself, and they asked how they could help me. I told them I was interested in pursuing custody of my daughter. And so they had me fill some paperwork out. I explained that I was in the House of Hope program, and that process began. You know, it was, I don't know, you know, somewhere about 6 months or so, maybe a little less. I got a call from South Carolina Legal Services. They had agreed to take my case and to represent me with an attorney, and that attorney, Scott McNeish with South Carolina Legal Services, has been with me over the past 4 years. And yes, ma'am, like I said, last week, my wife and I went to our final court hearing. And at the end of that court hearing, I was awarded sole custody with full discretion of my daughter, Marianne. You know, the judge said something to me that no judge has ever said before. She said, "Sir, you have shown a history of making good choices, and I trust your judgment." And that was the end result. Is Marianne is now, you know, it's today I'm living life differently. You know, I used to live life as an ex-convict. You looked at me and you knew what I was. You know, I lived life as a drug addict. You looked at me and you knew exactly what I was. today I'm living life as a child of God, as a Christian man, as a leader in my church and in my career, and as a family man. You know, the Lord blessed us with a beautiful home a couple of years ago, and you know, now He's completed that process with custody of Mary Ann, and He's blessed us with our son Nathan, and let me not forget my wonderful, beautiful wife Julie. You know, I'm not living under the oppression of my choices, my negative choices any longer. Today I'm living in the freedom that God gives me as a child of His. I had completed the House of Hope program. I had also graduated the Reformers Unanimous program. Corbett had asked me to step up into leadership and become a group helper. And sometime after that, he asked me if I could meet with him. And, you know, I'm always nervous to meet with Corbett. You know, you're like, okay, what'd I do wrong? But he, that's not to shine a negative light upon him. He's a wonderful man and God that really just helps encourage you on your walk. And that's what he did to me that day. Was he said, Brian, have you thought about the next steps? And I'm like, well, I mean, there's so many, you know. He was like, well, particularly, you know, a wife and a mother for Mary Ann. And I was like, oh man, Corbett, I'm still a wreck, man. Like, and he was like, well, why don't you pray about it? And so I was like, okay, well, I can do that. And so at first, like any man out there, you know, I started praying, you know, this is truth, you know, Lord, you know, can she please have blonde hair? You know, Lord, please don't let her be from like the same background I'm from. You know, Lord, please don't let her have kids of her own. You know, Lord, please let her have a stronger relationship with you than I do. You know. And then there's those desires of the heart that we don't mention, you know, that the Lord has also fulfilled in my wife. But, you know, the prayers changed from what I wanted in a wife to, wait a minute, like, Lord, you're about to bless me with the most beautiful gift you've ever blessed me with. So, you know, please prepare me. Turn me into the man that will honor and cherish that gift that you have in store for me. You know, help me to be a loving husband. Help me to not speak out of anger. Help me to, you know, not run at the first sign of, you know, adversity. You know, help me to be devoted to lead. You know, and so I stopped praying for what I wanted and started praying that the Lord would prepare me for what it was He had in store for me. And, you know, God, man, sometimes He's just on it and answering our prayers. And, you know, I was invited with some friends of ours from church, my roommate Drew and my daughter. We were invited to Florence Flamingo's game and with some church friends. And, you know, Julie was also friends with those friends. She had come over to say hello. And that was like the first time I was ever like officially introduced, if you will. And so, you know, the Lord just kept laying her on my heart. You know, I even, you know, situations were arising where I'm like, okay, God, like, is this you at work? And so I reached out to those friends that had invited to the game, and I informed them of everything that had been going on in my heart and, you know, in my life. And then I went to Corbett, you know, as my leadership. You know, I had to seek his approval and know that this is in God's will. And he did an introduction a couple Sundays later.
My name is Julie McQueary. I'm married to Brian. I previously have worked in education, and then once we had our son, I've stayed home since. Brian and I met almost 3 years ago. This July will be 3 years. So I really didn't know Brian. I had seen him around church. I'd seen him with Mary Ann. Our church had a day where they kind of showcased our addictions ministry, and I believe Brian gave his testimony as well as his roommate at the time. So I learned a little bit about him then, but he was not on my radar at all for anything. And I guess a couple months after that, Corbett, who leads our addiction ministry at our church, pulled me over to the side to ask me about Brian, if I was interested in him. And I didn't really say one way or the other because I didn't know anything about him. I guess that was after we had seen each other at the ball game, but in my mind, I was just talking to friends. I didn't, you know, Actually, those same friends, I had told them about what I had been asked, and one of them shared some things with me that they had learned about Brian in a conversation they had had with him, and told me that he would be worth me getting to know, whether it led to anything or not. So I took a chance on that. Corbett introduced us one Sunday morning, and then we went over to the same friend's house that evening after church to kind of get to know each other. I sat on the opposite side of the table as he did. But anyways, things progressed quickly from there, and then within 7 months of meeting, we got married. I've seen Brian grow in a lot of different ways during that time. He had a strong character when I met him. I think people would tell you he's the nicest man they know. He has a very high level of integrity, and he still does. But as we've worked through a lot of different things in our marriage, it has required a lot of growth from him. He's had to learn. I've had surgery 2 different times during which he's had to care for me a lot. And he has had to put himself last as a result of that. And make some sacrifices there, and we've had to just work on our relationship, how we've had to handle different disagreements and different things in that, and I've seen a lot of growth in him in that. You know, obviously he wouldn't be where he was without the Lord, but God used the House of Hope to give him the structure that he needed to set really just rules and discipline and boundaries in his life that he wouldn't have had without them, and he had to learn to operate within those boundaries in order to make good and healthy choices. So yes, I'm eternally grateful to the House of Hope because they brought my husband to me. So,
you know, one of the things I shared when I gave my testimony is that, you know, in my addiction, I found myself, there wasn't one thing that was going to fix me. You know, if you gave me a job, I still had that addiction. I was still homeless. You know, if you gave me a place to live, I couldn't pay for it. You know, I was deep in the addiction. There wasn't any one thing that was going to fix me. It was the compilation of it all that's offered here at the House of Hope. You know, when they say it's a life recovery program, it takes someone that, you know, through a result of their own choices, you know, it's difficult to take that one step. But when they put you, when they take all that away and they give you a place to sleep, food to eat, you know, and you start working towards, you know, getting that job, and then start, you know, paying those fines and getting that license back and getting on top of your child support, you know, it took the House of Hope to give me the structure that was, like my wife said, to give me the boundaries, to understand what it means to, you know, have authority in my life and to obey that. You know, they teach us in our at church, you know, obedience is doing what you're supposed to and not doing what you're not supposed to. You know, I would ride that fine line of doing both, you know, hiding what I was doing while making it look good and doing what I was supposed to do. So, you know, I'm definitely grateful for, I will forever be indebted to what the House of Hope has done in my life. And my wife and I are looking for ways to get further involved with the house. I do testimony at the Ark. You know, we attend the Night of Hopes, and, you know, we're looking to find a way in our finances to donate and give back and just, you know, give them the same love that they gave to us. But you asked if there was one other noticeable difference. You know, the night my wife and I were officially introduced together, you know, I show up in a pair of red Vans, a blue suit, a red shirt, and a red flat bill St. Louis cap. And I will say that the growth is my wife don't let me wear those things anymore. So, you know, much more presentable these days.
My name is Mary Ann, and I'm 9. I'm here today to show how my daddy's life has changed, and that has changed my life. It helped my dad to trust Jesus, and when he trusted Jesus, he stopped smoking and stuff like that. And then a few years later, people have gotten stuff ready in me a room at the house where Daddy used to live. And but before that, Daddy was still in the House of Hope, and I and I had to live with my friend. But after that, I had to go back to Miss Crease's, but now I get to live with Daddy and Mom, and of course my baby brother Nathan. Well, in school I have been getting straight A's in school now that Daddy's put me in a good Christian school. I used to not be in a good Christian school. I used to be in a public school, and in that public school people would do mean things to other people and stuff like that. But in this Christian school, people won't let you do that stuff. I get to do violin lessons, I get to do volleyball, I get to do soccer, I get to do baseball, I get to do cheerleading. Well, this year I'm doing volleyball camp, and I have a feeling, well, next week I'm doing volleyball camp. I have a feeling that I'll love volleyball camp. Maybe a little bit better than baseball. My favorite before then will be baseball. And one more thing, 2 more things that Daddy and Mom have gotten able to do and buy stuff for me is that they got to put me in this VBS camp that FBT is doing, and PD Pride Camp is something that's really fun. PD Pride Camp takes you on field trips, they take you bowling and skating, stuff like that. I've gotten to see my 2 brothers, which my mother had, not that one, but my other mother. I got into Arizona for a week.
What did we see there?
The Grand Canyon and Hoover Dam. How many miles of a walk was the Grand Canyon?
3.5.
3.5.
We